And we're rolling.
Hello, my name is Jackie Geringer McDermott, and we're recording live from the English Valley's History Center. Today is February 22nd, 2025. This diary or journal was written by my great-great-aunt, Mary Elizabeth Claypool Wade, who was known as Libby Wade. She was my grandmother's aunt and the matriarch of our very, very large family. Libby lived a half a block east of Main Street in a little house on Oak Street in North English, Iowa, until near the end of her life in 1959. In 1946, she was 71 years old. Here's a picture of Libby. She's on the right side in this picture. And this is her sister, Sarah Myrtle Claypool Mall, the wife of J.J. Mall, her brother Henry Claypool, and her brother Benton Claypool, who was my great-grandfather. I don't remember Libby, but she knew me as a baby. Downtown North English was also the center of my life as I grew up. I would like to introduce you page by page to the cast of characters from North English, Iowa, and the surrounding English Valleys area. July 1st, 1946. Russell went to Cedar Rapids. I washed. It was nice and cool. I had a big rain last evening. Millie Knipfer was here a while, and also Hattie. Jenny brought the baby up. Bought new telephone batteries. This is Russell. He was Libby's 38-year-old son that lived in the house with her. Millie Knipfer was a friend, as was Hattie Newberry Killian. They were likely doing sewing or church work or visiting. Millie Knipfer was 64 years old in 1946, and she's in this picture. And she was the mother of Ernie Knipfer, Frank Knipfer, Frances Pierce, and Laura Schaff, who was the mother of Doris Brock from South English. Millie lived with her own mother, Laura Swope, who lived to be 102 years old. And this picture from 1948 is Millie Knipfer. She's over here. Her mother, Laura Swope, down here. Her daughter, Laura Schaff. Her granddaughter, Doris Brock, and young Billy Brock. The baby that daughter-in-law Jenny brought up to see her would be her new grandson, Mickey Yoss. And this is Jenny. And this is Mick Yoss. No, Libby did not have a cell phone. She likely had a phone that looked like this. And as you can see, it's got a battery pack at the back. July 2, 1946. Cooler. Got a card from Anna mailed at Fort Scott, Kansas today. Nice today. I did the ironing and the mending. Millie brought me some green beans in the evening. Clyde Post's funeral was this p.m. I did not go. Russell washed his car while the time off was for the funeral. I was over to Newberry's a while. Mrs. Wagner had a son from her son in Havana. Mamie was here in the evening. Daughter Anna, who's on this picture right here, and her husband, Richard Cray, and their sons Verl and Arlen had been up visiting and went back to Texas. They sent Libby a card on their way home. All the businesses uptown were closed during the funeral of longtime jeweler Clyde Post. Libby always enjoyed fresh vegetables for her table. Newberries were the neighbors that Libby visited. The new young bride, Mamie Geringer, came to visit Libby. She is now her great-niece by marriage, as her husband, Glenn Geringer, is the son of her niece, Bertha Claypool Geringer, my grandma. Lena was here and brought some transparent apples. This is July 3rd, 1946. Judith has whooping cough for sure. I made some pies in the p.m. Hattie stopped in. Also, her mother came on her way to town. Lena is her daughter-in-law, the wife of her second son, Warren or Mike Wade. That's them right here in this picture. And Judith is the young girl in this picture that has the whooping cough. Hattie Newberry Killian is her 55-year-old friend who has moved back to Cedar Rapids to care for her elderly mother, Clara Newberry. Clara's on this side, who also dropped by. Libby's house is conveniently located on the way to town, so many times people stop by. I'll bet those pies that Libby made with the transparent apples were very good. July 4th, 1946. A very quiet day here. Russell went to the creek, caught a few fish. I went over to Verdi's. Belva and Baby and Evelyn came, so I came home. Ina came down. Quite a surprise to have her come. I went home with her. Cad wants to go live with her. Ina's worried about it. Libby's son Russell was an avid fisherman. Verda Mahana McKinstry is Libby's buddy and neighbor. Granddaughter Belva Yoss and her baby Mickey Yoss and her sister Evelyn Kurtz came to visit Grandma Lib. So Belva is on this side, and this is Evelyn right there. They came up to visit. Ina Bell McKinstry Claypool is Verdi's sister-in-law and the widow of Libby's first cousin, Wallace Claypool. She was 86 years old in 1946 and lived about a block away across the busy Main Street, so Lib walked her home. Cad, who wants to go live with Ina, is 83-year-old Carrie or Cad Claypool, the widow of Grant Claypool, who was Wallace Claypool's brother. The father of the Claypool brothers was William Claypool, a brother to Libby's father, Jonathan Claypool. And here's a picture of all three of our Claypool immigrant ancestors that came to Iowa. They are William, Samuel, and Jonathan Claypool. July 5th, 1946. I went down to Wayne's. Jenny is sick with an abscess in her lower bowel. Very painful. In the evening, went to Kinross and then to Wellman to see Bessie Curl. Not there. They came up here, so we just missed them. LaJean Martin Rowe has a baby girl. Wayne is Libby's oldest son, who lives a block away with his wife, Jenny. Bessie Curl, that they went down to see that wasn't home, is Libby's sister-in-law, the sister of her late husband, Bert Wade. July 6, 1946. Jenny seems a little better. Helen Bringman is there to help. Russell went to Cedar Rapids. Hattie was here. Hot today. Russell and Jack Geringer and Bob went fishing in the evening. I went over to Verdi's for a while. Helen Bringman was Jenny's niece and a sister to Josh Bringman from Kinross and Ruth Ann Herr from Sigourney and many others. Jack Geringer, who went fishing with Russell, is my grandpa John Geringer, and he's on the left side here in this picture, and Bob, his son, would look like this in 1946. Saturday, July 7th, 1946. Russell stayed all night and got some nice fish. One was 19 inches long. I was down to see Jenny in the evening. She is in a lot of pain. Hazel and Helen came home with me. Suzanne and Baby came along. Libby's married granddaughter, Hazel Wade Cobb, came up to her house, along with her cousin Helen Bringman and Libby's great-granddaughter Suzanne Kurtz and great-grandson Mick Yoss. July 8th, 1946. Doctor lanced the abscess, gave her a lot of relief. Still terribly sore. I washed in the morning. I can tell that Jenny's illness is very concerning to Libby. Libby sticks close to the old-time schedule of washing on Mondays. July 9th, 1946. Did part of the ironing and put curtains up. Will wait until cooler to do more. Went to lodge in the evening. Installation of officers, 37 present. Libby lived in the days before air conditioning, so it was smart to put off some of these tasks until later. Rebecca Lodge was held in the upstairs of the Locker Building, the last brick building on the west side of Main Street, just a half a block away from Libby's house. They also held dances up there. July 10th, 1946. Had a nice picnic lunch, or excuse me, had a nice lunch. Heard that Leona Glantz is very bad. Still hot but cooler this PM. Russell went to Buchanan for Home Lumber Company. I've been sewing. Went to Wayne's in the PM. Jenny is better but looks bad yet. Got a letter from Laura Wilson at the Mason IOOF home. July 11th, 1946. Heard that Leona was some better from Reva, who was here. Nice and cool today. I was down to Wayne's for a while. Leona Glantz was a family friend, and Reva Gilchrist Claypool was a teacher here when I went to school. July 12th, 1946. The barn that Mrs. Newberry sold was moved today. Bertie, Mary R., and Mary Newhouse were here. Russell went to Cedar Rapids. I got 24 eggs from Mary R. Bertie McKinstry and Mary Rugsager and Mary Newhouse were Libby's friends. I would venture to say that Libby's eggs were much cheaper than what we could find today. July 13th, 1946. Bernie's birthday. He would have been 79. Mary Newhouse brought some transparent apples. I made 2 pies. Mary R. here and also Jenny. Stella Wallace and Eileen Cobb Wallace were here. Wilbur Crays are in town, I have heard. Verner Claypool was her older brother. He's right here in this picture. It's good news that her daughter-in-law, Jenny Wade, is up and around again. Stella Wallace was daughter-in-law Lena Wade's mother, and Eileen, I'm not sure which way you say it, Cobb Wallace was the wife of Lena's brother, Armand Wallace, and she was a sister to Ty Cobb, Shorty Cobb, Ray Cobb, and a half-sister to Milo Cobb, Glenn Cobb, and a stepsister to Pat Carter and Mickey Ballard. Okay, I give a shout out to Chris Cobb Galligan and Louise Ballard Davis for knowing how to explain those relationships correctly. Wilbur Cray and his wife that were in town are a brother of her son-in-law from Texas, Richard Cray. Sunday, July 14th, 1946. Maud C's birthday is today. She's 49. A very hot, sultry day. I did not feel very well. Russell went to the river, got 4 pretty nice fish. Dean was here a while. I went over to visit Hattie in the evening. A breeze sprung up and it was nice over there. Maud Claypool was her friend and the wife of her nephew, Ray Claypool. Okay, in this picture, Ray Claypool is in the back. He's Vernie's boy, right there. And Dean is the one in the front. He's the youngest child of her brother Vernon. And his wife, Minnie Smart Claypool. July 15th, 1946. Cooler during the night. Was nice today. Cloudy and a little rain. I washed and canned green beans. Mary R. sent them to me. I canned 6 quart. Russell went to Cedar Rapids in the PM. Gladys Bishop was here a while. My friend Julie Cox Steinerson remembers that Libby's friend Mary Regseger lived in the house where the Kenny Donahue family later lived, and that she had a chicken coop out behind and a large garden. Gladys Bishop was a young neighbor woman, and I found a picture of her in the paper. She later lived in Cedar Rapids. That is the end of the diary portion of the program for this week. Our featured citizen this week is Mace Brown, the only Major League Baseball player from North English, Iowa. I have gathered research on Mace Brown from Dave Fobert, who is a walking encyclopedia of old-time baseball information, also from an article by Jacob Glandon in the Neighbors magazine last year, and from newspaper articles by the late Carl Hogendorn and Jess Mason. Mace Stanley Brown was named after Mace Butler, a talented athlete near the age of his older brother Rex Brown, who graduated from high school the day that Mace Brown was born in 1909. His parents were Garrett or Gary and Justine Bramer Brown. Here's a picture of them with Mace. when he was in the big leagues. Gary Brown was the janitor at the North English School for 42 years and the ticket taker at the baseball games. Justine, or Teen as she was called, was a homemaker and a 50-year member of the Rebecca Lodge in North English. Mace's brothers were Rex Brown, who worked at the Home Lumber Company and later became the Iowa County Auditor, J.C. Brown, who died from influenza in October 1918 when he was a senior in high school, and Vaughn, or Cub Brown. He's right here in this picture that Scott posted yesterday on one of his pages. Vaughn was also listed as a flu victim and died of pneumonia after being sick for a month while he was stationed in France. Vance had left school just prior to his graduation day in May 1917 to join the service and was a member of the U.S. Army Hospital Corps and passed away just a few months after J.C. Brown in January 1919, and he was still only 19 years old. Von Brown was also a super talented athlete, and several experts told Carl Hogendorn that Vaughn could have also played in the major leagues. Mace's sister Lena married Earl Warner, the son of Frank Warner, who we previously did a spotlight on for this program. Lena Brown Warner was the mother of Stanley Warner and Fern Warner Crawley. So Mace Brown was the great uncle of Carolyn Warner Elwood from the History Center, and her brother Lloyd Warner, and of their cousins Linda and her sister Diane Crawley, who I have met when she comes to programs at the History Center. Mace was the captain of his North English High School football team in 1925, and also in the track team in school. In May 1923, Mace was the catcher on the White Pigeon Town team, and he was only 14 years old at the time. He was a catcher on the North English Town team when he was 15 and 16 years old, and in September of his senior year, with guys much older than him, like his brother Rex Brown and Forrest Shanks. Carl Hogendorn described Mace Brown as, quote, big and strong and a hard thrower. Mace was hit by a pitch while at bat in the Marengo game, and there was concern that he had broken bones in his face. But Dr. L.A. Miller did x-rays after his mother had sat up all night with him and said nothing was broken. Mace was back leading his high school football team soon. Mace Brown graduated with the class of 1926 at North English High School. He won the Iowa Interscholastic Meet throwing the javelin. He then participated in the National High School Track Meet in Chicago. 35 local track fans chipped in $1 each to finance Mace's trip to the national meet. Mace then received a scholarship to the University of Iowa, where he attracted the attention of the baseball coach. Mace switched to baseball and was a catcher the first year before turning to pitching. In the 1929 season, he pitched a no-hitter and won almost half of Iowa's wins that year when they took second place in the Big Ten. Then that summer, Mace was paid to pitch on a semi-pro team in Marshall, Minnesota, so that ruined any chance for him to play ball for Iowa again. He started with the St. Louis Cardinals and was a teammate of Dizzy Dean in the St. Joseph Farm Club. He spent 4 years in the minor leagues pitching at Greensboro and Durham, North Carolina, Shawnee, Kansas, and Des Moines, Iowa. He pitched for the Tulsa Oilers in 1934 and won 19 games. Mace Brown became a Pittsburgh Pirate, pitching in his first major league game on his 26th birthday on May 21, 1935. He was named the top pitcher in the league in 1937. He was mostly a relief pitcher. There were 3 memorable incidents in his baseball career. The first was during the first week of his first year, 1935, when he was sitting in the dugout on Forbes Field in Pittsburgh, and Babe Ruth sat down beside Mace after hitting 3 home runs, the last in his career for the Boston Braves. Babe Ruth spoke to Mace, saying, "Boys, that last one felt good." Mace's wife had the 3 Babe Ruth home runs on film, according to Dave Fobert, but then the film wore out. Also, by the way, Dave Fobert has a signed Mace Brown baseball. The second incident was that Mace Brown was the pitcher in the Homer and the Gloaming game when Gabby Hartnett swung in his final pitch of the game from Mace Brown just before darkness fell, and hit a homer, leading the way for the Cubs to win the pennant that year. The third incident was when Mace Brown from the Boston Red Sox pitched the third and fourth innings after Bill Zuber from Amana pitched innings 1 and 2 in the 1946 World Series. It was the only time two pitchers from the same team, same county, and the same state pitched in a World Series game. Bill Zuber later owned Bill Zuber's dugout in Homestead. Carl Hogendorn traveled to Chicago to see Mace pitch and have dinner with him along with Jack Dixon in 1943. They also ran into Stan Warner and Billy Lockridge in the hotel, so presumably they were there to see the game too. Carl reported that Mace was back in North English. On November 11, 1937, Mace Brown was the honored guest at the Hotel North English when 50 men from town sat down to eat a chicken dinner. Mace was praised by his fans and friends for being the #1 National League pitcher that year. In 1938, Mace Brown pitched in the All-Star Game. In October of 1938, Mace Brown and Bill Zuber were honored at a banquet for 150 people at the Christian church. He showed everyone his gold watch. And here's a picture of Mace when he was pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. We don't know who the little girl is, but it's a good picture of Mace.
Oh, she's talking to someone.
Mace took time off to serve in World War II, but then came back to baseball, where he helped the Boston Red Sox win the pennant in 1946. His career stats were 76 and 57, with a 3.46 ERA and 44 saves in 387 appearances, 55 as a starter. He pitched 1,075 innings. He was one of the first relief pitchers and the first relief pitcher to play in an All-Star game. Carl Hogendorn remembered that Mace was a big, lovable guy, happy with his life and his achievements. Jess Mason, who also wrote in the North English Record, was a classmate of Mace Brown and remembered that Mace worked for Lisa Miller on the farm when he was struggling as a young baseball player in 1925 and 1926 when he was still in high school. And Lisa Miller made it possible for him to, quote, plow corn and dream about baseball at the same time. I also found a letter that Lisa Miller, who, by the way, is Gary Miller's grandfather, wrote to the Cedar Rapids Gazette columnist Gus Schrader in 1965 that told about how Mace Brown always said he was going to be a major leaguer and that they would take a few days off from the farm to go to Chicago to see the White Sox play. Also, Lisa Miller saw Mace Brown pitch in the 1946 World Series. Carl Hogendorn said that he saw Mace Brown pitch 3 times in the 1946 season. Mace Brown was also a paid employee at the school when he was in high school. At the end of his pitching career, his annual salary was $12,000. After Mace Brown retired from playing, he was a coach and a scout for the Boston Red Sox until he retired in 1989. He lived in Greensboro, North Carolina, with his wife, Susan Vaughn Talley Brown, who he married in 1930. Their children were Ronald Allen, or Al, and Carolyn. He also had 5 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren. Mace Brown passed away in 2002 and was buried in his Boston Red Sox uniform. His daughter Carolyn furnished information to Jacob Landon for his article last year. And here is the shadow box at the History Center with Mace Brown's glove and pictures of Mace. Hope you can see that well. Try to move it forward a little bit. If you come to this History Center, you can see this in person. We are set up today beside the mosaic. According to Scott Romine, it's called the Iowa Project. It's right back here. The Iowa Project was initiated in 1973 by the VA Medical Center in Iowa City as a group occupational therapy project. More than 80 patients and staff worked from October 1973 to June of 1974 to create this mosaic depicting historical, industrial, and cultural highlights across Iowa. The mosaic was displayed in the VFW Hall at 609 Hollywood Boulevard, Iowa City for many years until a renovation project required relocation to a new home. It was moved to the English Valley's History Center on December 14, 2021, and restored by Barbara Brown in 2023-24. It is truly a work of art, and every time I look at it, I see more fine things. Both Iowa rivers are depicted, and the Mississippi and the Missouri, as well as the state motto, a farm, a goldfinch, the state bird, pictures of sailboats on Lake Okoboji, Herbert Hoover, Quaker Oats, the old Capitol in Iowa City, Des Moines, a tractor, a cornstalk, and the list goes on and on. I'll get out of the way for a second so you can see more of what's there. But it's another thing. Come to the History Center and you'll get to see all of it. Sometime when a subject is brought up, people will say, ask Jackie, or Jackie knows. Truth is, I don't always know, and sometimes I am wrong. My memory is really not all that good, and I am forever asking my brother Lou, or Dan Best, or Scott Romine, or Dave Jackson, or others who arrive at this History Center to answer questions for me. I believe we learn by sharing, and I have been learning so much since we started these programs. I will be forever grateful for that. One picture that has been circulating lately on social media is Mrs. Rowena Roller Means. My comment was, wasn't she Miss Butler's sister? No, I was wrong about that. It was so many years ago I had forgotten. So, from the internet, I have refreshed my memory. Mrs. Rowena Means was from the Roller family. Her father was Albert Leslie, or Les Roller, and her mother was Minnie Troger Roller. Rowena had two brothers, Charles Stanford Roller, a physician and surgeon from Woodland, California, and John O'Brien Roller, who was an accountant in Chicago, and later from Arizona. Rowena was married to Clarence Means, and they lived at a house just east of the North English Cemetery that had Roller's woods behind it, which is a grove of trees west of Bill and Sandy Van Dee's house. Rowena received her teaching degree at the University of Iowa and later took classes at William Penn College. Rowena and Clarence had two children, Peggy and George. George Means recently passed away in Missouri, and with his wife, Shirley, they had 8 children. Rowena and Clarence Means and family lived in the Malcolm and Victor areas, and she taught at Victor until she came to North English in 1959. Rowena Means taught in the other 4th grade room at the Lutton Building, where I started in 1960. She retired in 1970. When asked how long she had taught, she said, all my life. Mrs. Mean passed away in 1990 at the age of 86. And here's some pictures of Mrs. Means and family. This is the one that was on the internet circulating that was put up by a relative of the family. And then this one I found is more like what she looked like when she came here. This was her last day of school when she was teaching at Victor, but this reminds me very much of how she looked when I was in 4th grade. And here's a picture of her with her husband and a couple of the grandkids, I would guess. And the other person that we're going to talk about is Miss Roy Butler. And it's Roy spelled R-O-E-Y. She was my 4th grade teacher in the other 4th grade room in the 1960s. Miss Butler was from the Butler family and never married. Her parents were Columbus Benton, or C.B. Butler, and Clara Jane Lockridge Butler. She lived from 1980 to 1986 and was 95 years old when she passed. Her brother was John C. Butler, who was a barber in Muscatine, and her 4 sisters were Mrs. Atha Allen from North English, Blanche Holmes from Smith Center, Kansas, whose sons were George and Vaughn Holmes, who was married to Libby Wade's niece, Beth Mull Holmes, that we often talk about, Mrs. Addie Harbor Kirkham, who was on the library board from 1938 to 1972, and was the mother of Mary Ellis Harbor Carter, the EV school board secretary, and Mrs. Gail Claypool, who was married to Libby Wade's nephew, Roy Claypool, and the mother of 4 girls, Marion Claypool, Kathleen Sawyer from Watchir, Elna DeJordy from Maryland, an artist, or Artie Weber, who was married to Paul Weber, and the mother of my classmate, Nancy Weber Feeker, and her large family of brothers and sisters, several of whom are regular listeners to my program and were raised near Kinross. Here is a picture of Miss Roy Butler and her siblings, John, Gail, and Addie in the back. and Atha, Blanche, and Roy in the front. So Miss Butler's right there. Roy Butler was honored with a dinner by the Lutton Building teachers in 1966 for teaching 45 years. Roy Butler had already been teaching 39 years when this blurb was written about her in the North English newspaper in 1957. She graduated from North English High School in 1910, went to Cornell College at Mount Vernon, and completed her training at the Iowa State Teachers College. She taught in a rural school near Union and contracted typhoid fever and went to Nebraska to teach, but found it too strenuous. Came back to Davenport for a business course, but decided to return to teaching because she was happier at that in 1921 at Webster. After 26 years in Webster, she came back to teach at North English. I was talking to my classmate, Helen Kirkpatrick Schwietert from Colesburg, Iowa and Lake Placid, Florida, about Miss Butler, and she said, "Do you remember what Miss Butler taught us to recite each morning?" Me, no. She started reciting and I Googled it. "Father, we thank thee for the night and for the pleasant morning light, for rest and food and loving care and all that makes the day so fair. Help us to do the things we should, to be to others kind and good. In all we do, in work or play, to grow more loving every day." And that's the Child's Bedtime Prayer by Rebecca Weston, 1890. It came up on my Facebook memories 10 years ago today. It was the day I gave my presentation on the Diaries of Lib Wade as a program at the History Center. Here's a picture of me and Dave Jackson from that day. I heard from my uncle Chuck Geringer from Conroy, who graduated from English Valleys in 1958. He is Libby's great nephew. He remembers enjoying stopping at Libby's house after school when he was in grade school. I also heard from Jerry Lee or Jerry Westfall, and she has some ideas on some topics for me. Dave Jackson has been talking to the Oliver family about an acquisition for the History Center, and we will be featuring the Roy Oliver family in a broadcast this spring. I also heard from Kathy Kaufman Stevens from the class of 1964. She remembers living near Mike and Lena Wade and daughters Phyllis and Judy on South Walnut Street. When I was researching this week, I found an article from the North English Record from 1964 about Vic Van Dyke, the longtime city employee who was the grandfather of my listener, Vicki Orndorff Johnson, and the Van Dyke descendants who live here. It was a picture of Vic supervising putting up the Main Street Christmas decorations for Christmas 1963. And it says the North English street decorations are annually among the prettiest and the most eye-appealing anywhere. The use of lighted Christmas trees has much to do with making the decorations attractive. It goes on to say that Vic has been working with the decorations for 40 years, but it started before that when the first strings of lights were put together by Leo Wagner and Bill Hahn, who was an Iowa Electric Company foreman here for many years. Vic says that he hopes it is his last year putting up decorations, and they agree that he has earned retirement. Vicki, please PM me your address and I will send you a copy of this article. I talked to Marcia Wade Vinson from Lena, Illinois on Sunday. She is coming to the EV alumni lunch at Bryant's at the Williamsburg Mall on Monday, February 24th. I am to take her a Hinkletown book. Dave Jackson says he has a few left and all proceeds will go to the History Center. She also wants an Everyone at EV book for 2025, but those won't be ready until after graduation. I talked to my classmate Ann Green Bombi yesterday, and she said that her brother Chris Green is coming back to North English for his class reunion this summer and is bringing a picture of my brother Lee. I can't wait to see it. A place that some of you might like to visit when you're in the area for class reunions and the alumni reunion this summer would be the Williamsburg Historical Commission at 516 Elm Street on the square in Williamsburg. It is a beautiful museum, and my childhood friend, Kathy Morrison Netzer, is volunteering Monday through Friday from 9 to 3 to give you a tour. It includes the completely restored hospital, which I like to refer to as the birthplace of Jackie Geringer McDermott, and lots of local historical items. Dave Jackson has been over there visiting with Kathy Morrison-Netzer, trying to get her to join me for a broadcast. She thinks that Smoky Row Kids would be a great topic. I also would like to have the Morrisons assist me with the Texaco fire story, which we'll be doing sometime this year. We would also like to remember the family of Betty Jane Marine Woodward from the class of 1961 who passed away this week. Betty Jane was such a sweet person and will be buried into our family cemetery at Yankee Point. An interesting family history tidbit. Her girls, Jane Ann and Mary Beth, are related to me on the Carter side from Betty Jane's mother and on the Claypool side from their dad, Donnie Woodard. And here's a picture of Betty Jane when she graduated in 1961. This is from the Every Wanted Evie book, and she's in the center of the picture. The English Valley History Center promotes the rich history of the communities of the rivers, valleys of North and Middle and South English rivers. It encompasses an area roughly served by the English Valley School District from Deep River to near Parnell and from Watcher to Kinross. This also includes the communities of North English, Millersburg, Webster, and South English. If you would like to donate, please send to the English Valley's History Center, P.O. Box 70, North English, Iowa 52316. If you have any pictures that you would like to share of anyone we have featured or anyone from an upcoming program, please let me know. Also, we will be doing a story on Bob Cobb this year, and I would like you to inbox me your memories. I don't necessarily have to use your names, but I really need to collect a lot of stuff on him because I'm doing a big story this summer. See you next week.
And that's a wrap.